She's not supposed to get into the cookie jar. It's like there was a law against it. Some things are against the law, you know.
Rice, fish, and tea better fare than they had at home. Since nearly a decade before Pearl Harbor, Japan's heavy industry has been mobilized on a war footing.
I saw some wretches eating their food raw, hiding their meager rations in their filthy quarters. Why, I wondered, did they not gather fuel to cook their food?
See how the chickens use the claws on their feet to scratch for the grain? What's that noise? Dick says the hen cackles because she just laid an egg. As you know, eggs are one of our most important foods.
In most areas, treatment plants process and sterilize raw sewage before dumping it into our waters. This means cleaner lakes and streams, and in turn, cleaner recreational areas with fewer flies, less chance of disease.
At first it all seemed like such harmless fun. It was hip to go along with the gang. But where's the gang now? Why aren't they with him when he needs them most? Too late, he realizes that by joining to belong, he's more alone than ever. This is the one trip he must take all alone. Only he himself can experience the unbearable agony of withdrawal. Alternate.
The chimpanzee has shorter arms and longer, slenderer hands and feet. The chimpanzee is capable of accepting, refusing, and thanking with 3 different. The woolly monkey, cousin to the spider monkey, inhabits the Guiana. It is heavier than its cousin, so the natives call it barrigudo, which means big-bellied. Gentle and
Chip, lad. Aye? I was wondering, how did our glorious family of potato chips come to be?
What, lad? You don't know the tale of the potato chip?
Chip, everybody in the whole world loves the potato chips, right?
Right you are, lad.
Well, then how in the world can human folk make potato chips out of a wee kettle for everybody in the whole wide universe?
Oh, where did you get that, blarney? Human folk don't make them by the kettle anymore, but by what themselves call ultra-modern production methods.
You don't say no.
I do. Come on, boy, and I'll show you.
Inside the quiet cabin, the air is pressurized to sea-level comfort, and there's almost no feeling of motion. The stroll about spaciousness of the mainliner Stratocruiser invites a leisurely look around. Back to the main passenger cabin, with its soft reclining seats and big picture windows. Amidship, you pause for a glimpse into the compact galley.
This water here is basically the water you're going to be drinking down in the city. And I feel I've got a responsibility to try my best to keep it clean for when it gets down there. It used to be when it rained here on the farm, the water that ran away from the back of the barn here was full of mud, manure, and it would just run brown and right into the stream. 2 years ago, we would spread every day. We'd have to take it out, spread it on the fields if the snow was deep.
It's a program that seems to make everybody happy.
Here's to the farmers who are working so hard to make sure we've got clean water to put in our coffee.
To guarantee the city's water supply is fresh at the tap, comprehensive tests are performed by the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, both in the lab and at over 1,000 sampling stations throughout the city.
New York City has probably one.
So through air power, peace was promoted.
Grandpa Allen is a little worried.
You see, Mrs. Allen and I just couldn't make the trip to San Francisco.
Their parents, they've just found a house out there, and quite naturally, they want the children with them.
Really, there's no problem. We often have children traveling alone. Oh, by the way, let me introduce you to our stewardess, Miss Murray, Mr. and Mrs. Allen.
The hostesses prepare lunch trays for their passengers. Here is one for Sue. And one for Bob. See how neatly everything is arranged on the tray? Meat, vegetables, dessert, and milk. Sue is enjoying her lunch. As the passengers eat, the plane continues its westward journey over the Great Plains.
Would you like to take a nap?
No, thank you.
Airplane seats are comfortable. You can push the backrest down and curl up. Many passengers like to take naps.
Each other.
Language and speech, the basis for communication, tools for learning, for broadening horizons of the mind, for developing new ideas, for exchanging knowledge, exploring new frontiers of science.
A single goat is herded in with a flock of sheep to keep off preying dogs. There are a few rangy cattle on these mountains, but fodder is scarce, and they give little milk. They have a few hogs, but a good hog needs more to eat than can be spared. And if the farmer turns them loose, they root up everything. The first settlers built sturdy log cabins when they came. Some are still standing, dried by the sun and wind of 100 summers, still serving as homes. All too common are pellagra and rickets and dysentery when children go without fresh vegetables and milk.
There you are. Now he's happy. The raccoon is found all over North America. His amusing ways, 1,001 mischievous antics, make him a most desirable pet. He does enjoy cleanliness. This egg has more resistance than any we've ever seen. Maybe it's an Easter egg or a hard boil. It's taking a lot of punishment. Its long tail is general welfare, getting about and for seizing and grasping. Kinkers are very fond of sweets and bananas especially. Hope it peels to them. They're accustomed to nests. These aren't around. Mexico, Central America, and South America. Which is the thumb? Thumb fun. Talking about creatures with long snoots, take the anteater. This animal is well-mostly long claws like jimmies for prying open logs and the rough nests of termites.
Junk. The dealer buys it by the pound and you come in pretty well loaded. You watch him count out your money and you look for that extra quarter. You slipped a few rocks into the load to build up the weight and he never suspected. One thing about George, he knew his way around. You can buy the camera now, only you don't because you don't want it. You feel
And so we rode into the jungle, At first I saw nothing but a grim chaos of green and growing things. But as my eyes gradually refocused, I saw the jungle for what it is. A fairyland, incredibly fertile, abundantly rich, overwhelmingly beautiful. A miracle in the sun. We were intruders in this Garden of Eden, unwelcome guests in the Green Mansion, and the rightful tenants found it necessary to quit lunch.
Here we are sitting down for supper. We had trays. You can see some of the food stuck to the back there. We had trays that we could position on our laps, Velcro, and then set our food in them. As Steve pointed out, this zero gravity adds new meaning to the term pass the potatoes. They float them all the way across the cabin. The menu was quite varied and really pretty good. People accused me, we had
to start a waltz in a phone booth. All around it, the flies were hatching on the water and struggling to dry their wings and take off. And this hungry bird was gobbling them up as fast as they appeared, on the water or in midair.
Really?
You know, even in my wildest dreams, I never dreamed I could dream up. And I was just about to step out of the boat and introduce myself when the bird went into a ballet. You've heard of the Dance of the Mayflies, haven't you?
Oh, of course.
You know, they soar over the water, dipping and rising. It's sort of a celebration of boy meets girl. Well, this Yellowlegs had its own version of the Mayfly dance. It was making sure that there wouldn't be enough mayfly, anything like that.
You lost me with that last remark.
Yeah, I guess it was a little fuzzy.
Tasty. Must not live by bread alone. The meal seems incomplete. Formerly, most bread was made in the home, but it took experience, but clean and wholesome. The conscientious baker is aware of his responsibility to the consumer's health.
During the Earth's history, major environmental changes were driven by the evolution of the planet and the sun. These changes probably, in turn, influenced biological evolution. For example, our sun's luminosity increased as much as 30% during its lifetime. The luminosity increase implies that for oceans, rainfall, and moderate temperatures to have existed as they have since at least 3.8 billion years ago, balances makes it possible for the body to move blood and extracellular fluids up to the head and down to the feet while functioning in normal gravity. The cardiovascular system, which includes the heart, the blood, and the blood vessels, is the part of the circulatory system that transports blood throughout the body. Working as a pump, the muscles of the heart push blood through the blood vessels to perfuse both systemic and pulmonary circulations. It is crucial that we develop effective countermeasures to help astronauts avoid microgravity-induced problems. Scientists have studied giraffes and snakes to investigate how their unique body structures have adapted to special demands placed on them by Earth's gravity. For example, a 5-meter-tall giraffe may have a blood pressure gradient from 70 millimeters of mercury at the head to 400 millimeters of mercury at the feet.
Oh no! We finish our dinner before we have our dessert. Go on now, clean your plate like a good little dog. That's better. Now you can have the...
The medicine man was arriving for a visit, and he saw Naha's sister cutting some sugar cane for supper. At the supper table, all the members of the family group came to eat together. There was Big Naha, little Naha's grandfather. He was the head of the family. There was Naha's uncle, his aunts and his cousins, and his mother and sister. Naha's father put safki into a dish made from a coconut shell. Safki is like cornmeal mush. It is a favorite food of...
In busy America, many mothers perform many necessary jobs outside the home.
But we must never become too busy to feed our children. These kids have left school for the lunch hour. They were given money to buy their noon meal, but look what they've done with it. Here they are, making a tasty snack do for a whole meal. No wonder there's no color in this lad's cheeks. He's hungry. But here in the United States, we're lucky. And by saving this waste, we can at the same time have this. We can only have this if we get together right in our own neighborhood. Here together, a practical plan of sponsorship of a school lunch program can be worked out. And the Department of Agriculture in Washington will help. It will help your community pay for part of the food by reimbursing local sponsors up to 9 cents. Be lunch, a good meal too, whether they can pay or not. It's this food at the right time in the right place that will make our kids better able to answer not only their questions in school, but the questions they must solve in building the future of our country. Well, some for me too. Oh, fine, fine.
A Congress of clowns, splitting didos, laugh makers all, headed by the world-famous gloomy Emmett Kelly. Introducing Miss Betty Rich, Queen of the Air, in a sensational display of breathtaking aerial feats without a net below. Miss Jean Allen with a herd of ponderous pachyderms, their trunks full of new tricks.
Finest champagne with the compliments of the rail.
And do you mean to say he always got away with that sort of thing?
No. Once he was arrested and brought into court.
Hiya, Grace. It's so nice to see you again. Your home is just wonderful.
Really charming, Grace.
Look at the dining room, honey. Oh, your new crystal is just wonderful.
Look at the view over here. It's incredible.
Oh, your yarding right through the dining room gives it some atmosphere for dinner. Honey, we should have our yard landscape.
Absolutely.
The farmer's sign, you know you've got a waste problem. And I'm talking about an area-wide fly problem resulting from an area-wide waste problem. Waste doesn't stop at the city limits or at the county line. We need a system that can handle all wastes, everything from household garbage to piles of manure to junked autos. Different areas have different problems. We plan for water, gas, and electricity for an entire region. But we don't even think about solid waste this way. Society certainly deserves something better than it has now. Make
Where were the Japs? A couple of miles from here. These men have been fighting the Japs for 3 weeks, day and night, without rest. Bandages are made of cotton. Stretchers are made of cotton. Mattresses, blankets.
Gee, I'm glad we got enough of it.
But I told you we're short. 2 billion yards short.
And buff-color phases are found in equal numbers in the species Hylobates larva. The head and face of the gibbon resembles that of man in some respects, and the brain is proportionately larger than that of monkeys. The eyes and their orbits are proportionately larger than those of man. Gibbons use their hands, feet, and teeth while eating fruits, leaves, buds, and insects. They are principally frugivorous. Those conditioned to each other show relatively mild competition. There are no cheek pouches for temporary storage of food. They are very selective in their feeding habits, showing marked preferences for certain kinds of foods. Males and females seem to be almost equally dominant. Within the family, strong attachment exists between individuals. Observe the typical seated posture with legs drawn up to the
Patty's been cooking this since early this morning, so let's eat it. Everybody eat up. I've come from a long line of coal miners, from all the way back to my great-grandfathers, both of them. And I didn't think I would go in the coal mine. And I've heard all my life about how hard it was for a man to make a living. It really stuck to me to know that somebody spent that much time.
It was really rough.
Patty, are these the potatoes you grew in the garden? Yeah, the corn is too.
My father told us how to get bread on the table and to be the right kind of man so that he wouldn't have these problems. So I've heard it all my life, to go into coal fields and make the best of it I could. That there was a great life if a man was a man who could handle the work and stand the hours to make the money to feed his family.
It is a rule among the colonists to stop eating when only moderately full. After breakfast, Cynthia attends little Daniel, the only one of the children born in America. Jonathan's first job for the day
What's going on?
You find out. Okay.
Yet power-driven tools need human energy to guide them. Human energy from good food, and good health from good nutrition, a well-balanced diet. All foods are divided into three main classes. Cane has been called the honey-bearing reed. Crude sugar mills were operating long before there were steam engines to drive them. Not so long ago, an exclusively hand labor operation. The leafy beet tops are fed to livestock.
For 20 minutes, the ship is bombed and strafed. Counterattack is futile. The Panay is going down. The men must abandon ship.
Clothes cubbies. But it turns out that the wall invites escape to the far side, where the children vanish from view. They slip out into the hall, and could even leave the building. A separate painting room causes more trouble. When the teacher is here, she cannot watch any of the other activities.
Later, when a major exam was scheduled, Bob set out to plan ahead for the other kind of reviewing. Intensive review. That day was Monday. He could spend more time reviewing on Wednesday and Thursday if he needed. Friday was the day of the exam. It would cover the subject of transportation.
And seating, helping them reduce their physical tensions and restricting their motion while increasing your safety.
It's essential that no cracks develop in the metal. If there are fine cracks, they may not be detected by the human eye, so once again, gamma rays are used to take pictures. If defects exist, the chambers are replaced. As this program has shown,
Raman's father put a bell around Kalyani's neck so that she can be heard from far away.
Stove heats the one room of our house. We use driftwood when we can find it, but most of our meals are cooked over a fire of seal fat. This is called blubber and makes a very hot fire. We eat lots of raw fish. When fish are frozen, we let them thaw so the skin will...
What do you want, a pin? Where is she now?
She said she was going to a party at Glenda Ford's.
Oh.
We raise 100 or more at a time. We have 16 sows. Each one gives us 2 litters of pigs every year. That's about 200 pigs. And that makes a nice load of pork for the market.
Guiding children into good citizenship is a primary aim of modern police work. Crime prevention, which deals mainly with juvenile problems, calls for the assignment of police women as well as policemen. It requires a thorough understanding.
With practice, however, the youngsters improve. And soon one manages to swallow his first cherry. If we walk along a woods road and listen and watch carefully, we may find the brilliantly colored scarlet tanager.
The launch vehicle is a Saturn 1B rocket, towering 224 feet above the ground and loaded with 1,600,000 pounds of liquid fuel. Far from the launching pad, the flight crew begins its momentous day with a breakfast of steak, eggs, and coffee. There is no hint of care or concern as the men, much like commuters everywhere in America, enjoy their breakfast coffee and read their morning paper. But no commuter anywhere will travel as high, as far, as long as the Apollo astronauts.
Good idea, Gene. Now the kite will fly all by itself. Yes, it is flying very well. Now we can all have lunch. Penny is hungry too. How about a biscuit, Penny? What do you say?
Freedom. Guard and fighting for us here and on the other side of the world. They look husky, and it's our job to help keep them that way by growing the food they need.
Digging termites out of their narrow tunnels would be an impossible task for most animals. The anteater has exactly the right equipment. A long, slender, sticky tongue. He thrusts it deep into the termite burrows, trapping the ants and termites on its sticky surface and drawing them back into its mouth. These suspenders, by the way, have nothing to do with keeping its trousers up. They just happen to be unusual markings on this altogether unusual animal. The powerful claws and strong prehensile tail are equally helpful when the anteater dines in the trees. There seems to be no lack of ants in this anthill. a stream of water is shot from the fish's mouth like a bullet. The prey is stunned by the force of the water and drops to the surface below. The spitting fish seldom misses the target. The archerfish has an unusual problem, the very serious one of refraction. Because the fish is under the water, he sees the insect where it isn't. Have you ever tried to shoot fish? If you have, you know it's practically impossible. The eyes are another example of unusual equipment. They are mounted in ball turrets, and one sight organ is able to rotate independently of the other. While one eye is searching for an enemy, the other eye is searching for a bite to eat. When the tasty prey is sighted, the eyes work in unison, probably to improve the aim of the tongue. The skin of the chameleon is a heavy plate of armor, and its
Jacques, home on leave, tells his nephew Claude of a typhoon his ship encountered in the Indian Ocean. But they got through safely with their cargo of rubber, copra, and cocoa for the markets of France. Although France is more nearly self-sufficient than any other European nation in most of the things Frenchmen eat, drink.
Frances would like to go outside and play. Her friend Hopper likes to play outside too, but today it's raining. Hopper had better be careful and not get wet. Frances only goes to the edge of the porch, but Hopper went too far and got his ears wet.
They are called rotifers because of the beating cilia around their mouths that look like rotating wheels. The rotary movement of the cilia assists in swimming and brings food into the mouth. The mouth has a pair of jaws to grind the food.
Look at all the little pigs. Mary's father is feeding the pigs, but Mary is not with her father. Let's look for Mary. She is not feeding the chickens. Where is Mary? She is not playing with her dog, and she is not playing with her kitten. Where is Mary? Frisky feels very grown up, eating dinner with all the older calves. After dinner, Mary opens the gate to the small pasture to let all the calves go out. Mary doesn't have to show Frisky what to do. We've seen the beautiful horse named Stardust. Would you like to make a scrapbook with pictures of horses and other animals that live on farms? We've seen Mary's father, Farmer Brown. Can you sing a song about a farmer? We've seen Mary doing many things. Can you write some of the things we've seen Mary do?
You see, the ISS is in a continuous state of free fall around the Earth, causing the astronauts and objects inside to appear to float and be weightless.
He eats many kinds of food: meat, vegetables, fruit, cereals, and milk. In common with all other animals, man must have water. He should drink several glasses every day. Many of the foods which man has learned to eat, nature has provided for. Fruits provide valuable food for man. So do vegetables, of which he eats many kinds. And since man is omnivorous, he also eats the flesh of certain animals, and many varieties of fish taken from rivers, lakes, and oceans. Among other foods which man eats are butter and cheese, which are derived from milk. From milk and milk products such as cheese, canned milk, and powdered milk. Eggs and the flesh of animals also supply proteins of the proper variety. Good plant sources of protein are the legumes, such as soybeans, peas, and beans, and cereal grains. Since they become part of every living cell of our body, we must eat foods containing minerals to replace those we lose every day. Excellent sources of these minerals are the foods nature provides for her young before they can fend for themselves, such as milk, eggs, plant seeds, and potatoes. Minerals also occur in meats, where they are made. Others are transformed from plants in the bodies of animals which eat them, and which in turn are eaten by us. This experiment indicates what happens if we try to get along without vitamins. Each day, these rats are fed butter which is rich in vitamin A, and also food lacking vitamin A.
At lunch, Mr. Baxter is worrying about Jimmy. He wants Jimmy to be strong and happy like Hank. And Dad thinks Jimmy seems so tired, and he can't be healthy if he eats like that. Well, it's plain to see that Jimmy...
Tell it's a warbler by the nervous way it hunts for insects in the foliage and by its thin bill. In contrast, the goldfinch, like other finches, has a thick, strong bill for breaking open seeds. He's a small bird, even shorter than a sparrow. In spring and summer, the colorful male is rich.
Then you must know how to eat your meal. And the only way to have good table manners when you want them is to practice them regularly at home. Get in a habit of eating properly, so it just comes naturally. Or take another case. Say you're having lunch with your boss. Say he's thinking about somebody to fill a good position that's opening up. Well, put yourself in the boss's place. Would you give the job to a fellow like this? To a fellow who thinks that table manners are silly? You see what I mean about putting your best foot forward? Table manners are important because people judge many things about you just by the way you eat.
All right, maybe so, but it's all so complicated.
Is it? Look, there's nobody here. Let's try it out.
What do you mean?
Come on. Besides, that supper party sounds good.
Some insects, like the grasshopper and the caterpillar and insect larvae, have developed into specialized eating mechanisms that feed upon all varieties of plant life. Small but greedy, these plant eaters multiply so rapidly that they would soon devour all plant life. So, in nature's way, controls have been created to prevent this from happening. Insects like the praying mantis have developed into specialized hunting mechanisms to devour the plant eaters. Thus, a balance in nature is maintained. The long, strong forelegs of the mantis are...
Avoiding constipation helps too. You can do this by drinking plenty of water and by eating brown bread, fruit, and vegetables. The ideal is to aim at a regular motion at the same time each day. You should try to keep your feet dry. That's all very well, but what about wet days? The answer is...
To launch one in your neighborhood. Have your mom ask the grocer for Super Energy Corn Friskies.
Look here, Dalton, I've told you before. This here hotel's reserved for us ranchers when we're in town. Now, as any fool can see, I'm a rancher and I'm in town.
Oh, no, Carl. Not now. Have a little head from our binge. Do you mind putting the light out? No.
Georgie, we're going to go places together. I'm going to work hard for you and give you all the things you should have. Make you proud of me.
Floods the market with hundreds of products which claim a magic ability to do some such ridiculous thing as rearrange calories or melt away fat or inhibit weight. All of them are worthless. It's true that there are certain legitimate products which can help curb the appetite, but these medicines are safe only when prescribed and taken under a doctor's supervision. Here's the basic truth about overweight. Nothing yet has been discovered that takes the place of sensible dieting. It's the only sure, safe way to control. But whatever the food fad happens to be, the idea behind these phony promotions is one and indivisible: to take money out of your pocket and transfer it to the pocket of the promoter. Here are the facts about food. Americans today are better off nutritionally than any people in the history of man.
And to take good health for granted. Our bodies are rugged. We can knock them around fairly hard. We can fill them full of a lot of things that aren't too good for them and still not seriously damage our health. But there
it may seem, this 100-foot cliff is composed almost entirely of diatoms. The Johns Manville Corporation is mining this so-called diatomaceous earth in a large-scale operation near Lompoc, California. For diatoms have properties which give them great commercial value. They are practically indestructible, and when made into bricks, they have amazing properties of insulation.
The crewmen ate with conventional tableware and expressed satisfaction with the food system. At the suggestion of the first crew, spices to improve flavor were carried on the subsequent missions. 70 foods were provided from frozen, thermostabilized, and freeze-dried foods.
Pig. That's what he found. But do you think they wanted to talk to Hoppy? No, they were too busy eating. Hoppy said to them, "If you eat too much, you'll get fat." The pigs just laughed. One white pig said, "You silly bunny, pigs are supposed to be fat."
sharp eyes help him find his food, and he soon spies the snail. Snails have hard shells to protect their soft bodies, but the roadrunner has a way to solve that problem. He merely goes to the nearest rock, and then he pounds and pounds the snail on it until the shell breaks, so that he can get at the snail in... This insect, the praying mantis, looks much like a leaf or green twig. If he remains quiet and motionless, his meal sometimes will come to him. In cases like this, his great oversized claws are useful for holding the captured insect. And the sharp jaws are built for chewing right through a piece of food. It will make a very tasty meal for Mr. Raccoon. But sometimes one gets away from him, and he has to dig for it. The raccoon also likes fish, which he catches with his front paws and eats with his sharp teeth. Most interesting of all, the raccoon washes his food whenever possible, turning it over and over in the water while he's eating. So it is that every animal in this world is especially equipped in some manner to catch and eat the food it must have in order to survive, food which it must have to live and reproduce its kind. How sharp are your eyes?
Those which are able to withstand the harsh elements and escape the hungry enemies of their environment. This film will show us how nature protects animals from being caught and killed by other animals. Here, a moth escapes being eaten because it is distasteful to the frog. Most often in nature, animals which prey upon others attack those which are smaller than themselves. But whatever advantages the enemy may have, a wide variety of defensive adaptations gives each kind of animal a chance to survive.
We'll have more of our great problems later. But when you look around and think about what we have, don't forget for a moment that we do have more individual freedom. We're better clothed. We're more comfortable. We're further from starvation and the whip of the police state. We're far better off than the rest of the world. We have our... You find some berries. A couple of days go by and you're still alive. But it's a full-time job. Let's say you're very lucky. You find some fish just when they're spawning. They're helpless. Now, this probably wouldn't happen to you, but let's make it easy. Let's say you get a couple of fish the way a bear does.
Well, sure, pastry, candy bars, potatoes and gravy taste good going down. They don't look very good when they hang on. And a fat man usually isn't a fit man. He's carrying an extra load all the time. So his body is working harder all the time, even just to move himself around. He wears out easier. Now, sometimes your meal may come in a box marked meal, combat, individual. Well, it isn't home cooking, but it is a balanced meal. Eat all of it, or some of everything, to keep up your strength and energy.
Murjono. Breakfast and other meals consist largely of rice, fish, and spices. Our families are very close to one another, and often all of the members of a village are related.
Bright in the infrared. And something that's cold looks dark. Ice cream. Blow dryer.
Japan has managed to build the first and only modern nation in Asia. Its people already rich beyond the dreams of most of Asia's millions. Still, there is much to be done to bring the Japanese living standard up to that of the West. With each passing year, there is progress.
Everybody line up for the first race. Billy Slater is really helping the kids run their show. They're off. Chuck Storm wins. That was a close finish.
A bowl of cereal and a glass of milk. Mother says that meat makes Kitty big and strong. By the way she likes to eat, you'd think she'd be the size of a house. It's all the milk she drinks that makes her bones and teeth so strong. When I finish my cereal, I have a piece of buttered toast and drink my milk. Of course, I eat more than Kitty, but then I'm bigger than she is. Kitty always cleans up her dishes right to the bottom. Like all cats, Kitty's neat. She wipes her mouth when she's finished eating.
The larvae would hunt for more and, like their parents, would eat the scale at all stages of their development. The Vidalia larvae thrived on their diet, apparently quite content with this new land, so long as there was plenty of cottony cushion scale to eat. The larvae grew rapidly. There's only a few days' difference in the age of these two, yet they were the same size at birth. When the time came, each larva stopped eating, attached itself to a leaf and slept, or pupated, like so many other insects. Although there was little noticeable movement, great changes were taking place during this stage of life. Later, out of each pupa, there emerged an adult beetle, a very hungry little beetle. The cycle of life was thus repeated again and again, thousands of times over, until, within just 2 short years, the cottony cushion scale was under control. The groves turned green again, the fruit rich and juicy. And what happened to the Vidalias? They thrived and spread throughout the citrus lands. And isn't it amazing that only 514 beetles were sent over from Australia? The Vidalia's entire life, from egg through adult, averages only about 2 months.
The cupbearers also distribute thousands of these wafers, and the crowd drinks to the health of the heroes of the day. Until very recently, bread was unknown to the Hudanos. The bread these children are eating was given to them at school. The master usually makes them eat it in front of
And flows easily through some materials and not at all through some others. While still other materials resist the flow of electric current and produce light and heat. Besides light and heat, electric current may also be used to make electromagnets.
The head moves this way and then reinforcing. I want to wait for a somewhat bigger turn. That's enough, I think. It takes a little skill to anticipate just the move you want to reinforce, because this must occur at the very moment of the response. We're getting the beginnings of a counterclockwise turn. There we are.
Yeah. Come on, Fisher.
A little bit more and he'll go all the way around, I think.
In order to be reinforced, the bird must wait at least 10 seconds before he pecks. This indicator here shows the seconds going by. It has to go all the way to 10, and then a peck is reinforced. If he pecks too soon, he must start waiting all over again.
It takes a lot of patience.
This is a very hard schedule for any sort of animal.
Including man.
He made it, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Can you build this bird up to a fixed ratio?
Well, I'll try.
What do you mean by a fixed ratio?
Well, that's our term for what in industry would be called a piece rate or piecework pay.
The bird is reinforced for every 10 pecks he makes. There, he was reinforced.
And you feel, Dr. Skinner, there's an analogy with piecework in a factory to this?
Yes, the human worker is often paid off in terms of the number of items he produces, the number of times he operates a press, something of that sort.
Quittons les marchés pour les restaurants et les cafés. Vous connaissez la différence entre un restaurant et un café, n'est-ce pas? Dans un café, vous prenez peut-être un thé, un café ou un apéritif, mais n'y demandez pas un steak. Il faut aller dans un restaurant pour dîner. Comme vous voyez, il y a des restaurants et des cafés à chaque pas. Le café, c'est le club du français et le délice du touriste. Passons sur une grande avenue où le...
Human comfort and more wealth for more people. These things have not just happened. Science and industry have worked together to improve the old and to create the new. And even today, new methods and new things still in the development stage throughout the nation's thousands of workshops will create new opportunities, new jobs, more wealth for all in the years to come. The test tube of science holds television, the wings of tomorrow.
The world has ever known. To most people, the movies in their theaters mean Hollywood. Hollywood, California, USA. The city that is not a city. Only a post office branch of Los Angeles. Where 30,000 specialists working in 272 separate arts and crafts, sciences and trades make the movies. Working as a team to put their ideas into pictures.
Sometimes insects such as the mayfly fall on the surface of the pond. Beneath the surface are large and small fish that may react to a mayfly like this. Of course, minnows and other small fish are a source of food for the larger fish. And so the problem of getting food is an important part of life in a pond. In studying this life,
of a relative, one of the many of a recent yellow fever epidemic. In the evening, the Dorniers entertain at dinner their friend of the boat trip, Mr. Abbott. Good food and lavish entertainment are points of pride with Creole platter and house.
And a Harris ground squirrel finds plenty of plant food. Moth larvae also eat plants. They are big eaters and could strip the desert of foliage if they were not controlled. But fortunately, larvae are an easy-to-get and satisfying meal for the desert iguana, which keeps an alert lookout for its own enemies. Pattern: competing and cooperating, pursuing and being pursued, faced always with the problems of finding food and safety. Once again, we are shown how all living things depend upon one another for survival. Though the desert may seem harsh, it abounds with life and beauty.
After the skunk is on its way, the prairie dogs soon come outside again and begin their barking and eating and gossiping once more. Food is a problem.
Become the food of the fish like the mackerel, herring, or sardine. The smaller fish become the food of the larger ones, and so on up the scale of life in the oceans. Even the huge whale is sometimes attacked and eaten by other whales. As on land, the search for food is a primary occupation of the creatures of the sea, and all forms of life.
Earthworms are an important source of food for other animals. Birds feed on earthworms, and so do toads and frogs. Snakes eat many earthworms. And look what we have caught using an earthworm as food for a hungry fish.
Some are scavengers that eat dead and decaying material. Why would this make them useful in your aquarium? Living algae, or pond scum, found on nearly all underwater surfaces, are the main source of food for snails. When eating, the snail uses hundreds of hard, sharp teeth on the surface of the radula tear the food into small bits. Here is the radula of a different kind of snail. By eating algae and other plants, snails help to control the amount of plant life in their water community. Snails, likewise, are kept from becoming too numerous by being eaten by fish or other animals. Thus, no one organism becomes so abundant as to endanger the lives of any of the others. We call this the balance of nature.
They grab the bark of the tree with their sharp, curved claws and hold on that way. See how the koala's toes are separated, 3 and 2. This gives them a strong grip for holding onto the trees. The eucalyptus trees where they live in Koala Park. Great forests of eucalyptus trees grow here. High up in this eucalyptus tree in the bush country is a soft and woolly ball. And of course, it's a koala. High up in the tree. He is eating as usual. Nearby is a kookaburra.
This bird lives only in Australia, too. And below are a couple of wallabies. Australia is the only place where wallabies live. A wallaby makes a good pet.
Does your lunch ever float away from you while you're eating it? Or do you ever feel aggravated when you drink a cup of coffee and it turns into a messy, spinning glob? For a small group of space travelers, floating food is an everyday occurrence. When the idea of sending people into space
tastes and smells are enjoyed to the hilt. This, too, is part of testing and tasting the world.
It thoroughly before swallowing it. Many of the hoof mammals, like this mule deer, have long, thin legs. Long legs and hard hooves are well fitted for running on hard ground, in open places. As you would expect, many, in order to raise them for his own use. This sheep is a domesticated hoofed mammal. The hoofed mammals provide us with many of the things we eat and wear. Another group of mammals, called the carnivores, or meat eaters, is made up of mammals that eat meat. This puma, or mountain lion, a member of the cat family, has long, sharp teeth.
With member of the deer family, the moose is the least handsome. He is easily recognized by his humped body and long head with its enormous muzzle. The female moose is smaller and does not have antlers. The one or two young, born in May, are called calves. They are not spotted as are most young of the deer family. Most typical mountaineer, the mountain goat. His food consists of small plants and mosses which grow among the bare rocks. The stocky mountain goat, with his short forelegs and cloven hoofs, is a skillful climber. An outer coat of long white hair and a soft wool undercoat protect him from the cold winds of the mountaintops. Many mountain animals...
Lands, since they do not compete for food, could also increase food production in several parts of the world.
Catering exclusively to writers or philosophers, journalists or bullfighters are gone, replaced by modern cafes or by a Madrid specialty, the fish bar. Spain's consumption of shellfish is prodigious. And the faces of loneliness or isolation, extremism of emotion, vitality and passion, individualism. Faces of Carthage, Greece, Rome, of the Goths, Moors and Iberians. Faces with fleeting... Two peasant brothers live with a widowed mother. In addition to a state social security program, Spaniards stoutly maintain their traditional system, in which each individual will probably provide a home at some time or another for a relative. This is a farm worker who, like many of the men of the village, has managed to purchase a plot of his own. He works on the big farms or in the orange groves during the week, tills his own 5 acres in the evening and on Sundays. His son says he's not going to be a farmer, perhaps a scientist or a doctor. 3 generations. The Spaniard's house, like the Spaniard, turns away from the outside and faces inwardly upon itself. Each Spaniard has his heart and his conscience. Each house has its courtyard. This farmer has farm tools, a motorbike for holidays.
In 1951, Dr. Russell A. Morgan, attempting to reduce the amount of radiation the patient must receive, developed a television system that could brighten the fluoroscope screen 50,000 times. This in turn enabled development of the first practical method of making motion pictures using X-ray. Today, the study of motion pictures of the heart in action has become an important tool in cardiac research. When observations from the films are analyzed,
and we use it too. When the sugar molecule is produced, there are 12 oxygen atoms left over. They form 6 molecules of oxygen. These molecules are not wasted.
Look at the scale, tell me what does it show? We'll learn more about the things that surround us. The more we measure, the more we'll know. The more we measure, the more we'll know.
To the poison. The tentacles will draw the prey into the tube-like stomach.
Where's my tobacco? Oh, Babs, you left your ring in the bathroom. You know, that's no way to treat a valuable ring like this. You might lose it. Say, how many of them have you got, anyway?
Too many. Hi, everybody. Has the eating commenced yet? Gee, I haven't had anything to eat in about 4 hours. Food is good, but the service is awful.
Was milked. Modern dairy farms use milking machines. Before milking, the dairyman carefully rinses each machine in a sterilizing water solution. Now, the 4 cups are attached to the cow's udder. The machine milks the cow in much the same way as the dairyman would milk with his hands.
Of Arizona, the Hopi lives today. These are a proud and ancient people for whom tradition is a living force in life. They have purchased implements from the white world, but they have not paid with the price of their dignity and self-respect. Their kachinas, or replicas of their gods, stand as a constant reminder, as a call of conscience in their heart.
Is given by the white areas. We're looking now, of course, a rapid sequence of this over about a 10-day period. It's always fascinating to look at these distributions because it shows the highly variable regions that
people gave us. Nipper kept the Persian melon for himself. And tomatoes? Oh yes, we like salad. And oh boy, I got a big piece of watermelon. Kiwa had his favorite, corn on the cob.
And what's a picnic without food? But who ever heard of such a thing? Yes, sir, it's the food that makes the picnic. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if this delightful young lady doesn't also know that it's the way to a man's heart. And banquets. Why, our national life would be entirely disrupted without them. Conventions would cease. Clubs go out of existence. High school seniors couldn't graduate. Politicians couldn't run for office. and the local boy who made good couldn't be welcomed home. And worse yet, Sweet Adeline and Hail, Hail the gangs all here would nevermore the welkin ring. Perish the thought. Now, we're sorry to tell you this, but with all this regular eating of 3 square meals, and sometimes more each day, many people, perhaps most people, do not know the fundamentals of good diet, which should be common knowledge with all of us.
On the other hand, with understanding of Paul's emotional barriers and a little sensitivity.
A terrific opportunity, and I know you can handle it. It's similar to the Appleby account you sold last week. Come to me if you need help. Remember, we're with you. I'll get right after it.
Sure, the same.
But since he does not see the pellet and the food cup, he is not rewarded. Now he finds the pellet and is rewarded for approaching the food cup. At last he hits the bar and gets an immediate reward. Has he learned? Will it take him as long to press the bar the next time? He goes back to his old response. He still makes a few irrelevant responses. The hungry animal learns the response, which is rewarded by the food that reduces his hunger drive. The satiated animal is inactive. Without hunger, food would not be a reward, even if he got it. Therefore, he does not.
General Tire salutes the American trucking industry. What would we do without trucks and the men who run them? Everything travels by truck to serve you better, faster, in the modern manner.
Watkins Furniture. This is the Sealy Ensemble with a white and antique gold French provincial headboard. And here is the early American spindleback style. Perhaps your taste runs to Danish modern. And this is the gold-accented washable plastic headboard. So bring your teenager in and let her decide for herself. Where should you come?
Astronauts need variety in their diet, just like we do. Fresh vegetables are good choices. We know most of what they will eat will be freeze-dried or prepackaged food.
Metabolism and in the regulatory and cellular systems in the blood. Without gravity-induced hydrostatic pressure within the cardiovascular system, blood moves centralwards and heart function alters. The reflexes that maintain adequate blood flow to our head and limbs on Earth may change.
Effects of isolation and confinement during long stays in space introduces another factor. How will crews get along with each other after being in close quarters during these voyages? One way in which scientists are beginning to answer this question is by studying subjects in underwater biospheres. Groups of divers are isolated for long periods conducting work on the ocean floor. The astronauts will be isolated in space. By studying personality and behavior as part of human factors research, scientists hope to develop criteria to use in selecting future crews. Lack of fresh foods also adds to the crew's feelings of isolation. To help alleviate this feeling, NASA is developing a system to provide fresh fruits and vegetables to long-duration crews. Although Space Station will provide longer stays in space than ever before, this is nothing.
Do you remember my friend Myrtle?
No.
I do not know her. I've never met her, and already I'm sick of her.
Well,
I'm not interested in your friend Myrtle.
under her blue jeans,
Now I'm interested.
she wears red silk panties that cost $30.
No kidding.
She reminds me of you.
Similar tests are being conducted in basalt, a type of volcanic rock. This is the near-surface test facility, a series of tunnels bored into the side of Gable Mountain. Again, electrical heaters and careful instrumentation are being used to determine the effects of a simulated waste package on the rock. Mined in a granite formation, canisters containing spent fuel from nuclear reactors have been placed in boreholes in a tunnel 1,400 feet beneath the surface. Electric heaters are being used in other holes to determine the effects of heat alone versus heat and radiation. The spent fuel and the heaters will be left in place for a period of 3 to 5 years. The results of these tests will then be compared to computer predictions of what should happen.
The work of these scientists has shown that except for persons with special medical needs, there is no scientific basis for recommending routine use of dietary supplements. A varied or
hills come alive with the approach of the annual Mountain Music Festival at the park.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Virginia Highlands Music.
And in fact, if you stand there and have this nice sense of rightness, that everything is in its place, and you turn 180 degrees and stand on your head, the whole world turns with you. And what was the ceiling now feels like the floor. And you know now that the chairs and tables are growing out of the ceiling. And you wonder why the designers built them that way. And all the lights are on the floor, and so on. Your sense of relation to the...
In the American family of the past, religion played an important role in holding the family together as an institution. It was not exclusively an individual experience. The family participated in it as a group, in church and at home too. There are children in this generation of Harringtons too, but they have their noonday meal at school. Today, children are less economically important on the farm, and so there's more time for education. Grace is seldom said before meals except on Sunday, but the Harringtons are still church members and attend services.
As the temperature rises evenly in all 3 test tubes, we discover an interesting thing. At about 200 degrees centigrade, oxygen is being evolved from the mixture. From the manganese dioxide alone, no oxygen is being evolved at the same temperature.
Many people leave their coach seats to go to the dining car. A dining car is like a traveling restaurant. Here, while they eat their meals, the passengers can enjoy the moving landscape. For passengers who don't want a big meal, this train has a lunch car. Bob has ordered a sandwich for lunch and a glass of milk.
Out of bamboo, the chopsticks which every home must have. Thousands of pairs are shaped by hand by artisans like Ma Hyung. And with chopsticks of bamboo, one may eat bamboo itself. Its roots provide a nourishing food, long popular in the valley. Bamboo upon the banquet board, and bamboo, too, in Britain.
Like most people of these highlands, both the older and younger chumbies chew the flavorful coca leaves. Coca leaves are a mild narcotic which reduces the sensation of hunger or fatigue. They also drink a native beer made from corn. Wherever wheat is grown, primitive people use this method, except where machines have been introduced. The oxen shake the grain loose. The heavier grains sift through the chaff to the ground. Antonio's village is fortunate. The land is fertile enough to provide food from here that the will and effort to create a better tomorrow is spreading across the ancient region that once was the empire of the Incas.
Throughout the year, where the seasons change, some animals move or migrate to places where the climate is more favorable. Ducks and other migratory birds fly to warmer climates during the winter and cooler climates during the summer. Migration is another kind of adaptation to environment. Some animals, like the squirrel, live in one place all year. During the warm months, the squirrel gathers more food than he can eat.
Hated the idea of going to bed. Couldn't he remember what he learned in Healthland? But the next morning, he did wake up by himself. A good way to start the day. Now he had more time to eat breakfast, but he still hadn't bothered to comb his hair. But Mother and Dad were pleased that at least Alexander was eating a good breakfast, and good food gave him more.
But baby rabbits are. Rabbits are mammals. They don't hatch from eggs. At first, they need a great deal of care. They depend on their mother to keep them warm and feed them. Their only food will be their mother's milk until they learn how to find other kinds of food.
Popularity. What is it made of? How can a person have a few close friends but be well liked by lots of people too?
Hey, Jerry, there's that new girl in our math class.
Oh, yeah. Her name's Carolyn Ames. Man, is she a swell chick.
Why, you know her?
Not really.
I don't know anything about props, but I could learn. I need some help, too. Have you ever been in a class play? Yes, one or two, but I never helped with props.
Carolyn doesn't tell them she had the lead in her school play last year. That might sound like bragging. Besides, it might make Betty fear competition.
How about helping with the makeup?
Hey, lay off. I saw her first.
Carolyn is careful, too, about competing with another girl over a boy that girl likes.
Bye, Carolyn. See you at school.
Yeah, see you in math class.
Say, Carolyn, we ought to get together and talk over those props, Lou. Could you meet me backstage at about 3:15?
That would be fine, Wally.
Okay, we'll see you then. I think maybe I'll take Carolyn to the dance Saturday night.
Fine, go ahead and ask her. Maybe we can work out a double date.
Ah, later. Saturday's soon enough.
Another common insect pest is the housefly. This insect is well known as a carrier of dirt and disease. In controlling such insect pests as the housefly, many of the arachnids, including spiders, are helpful to man. Spiders such as this one spin webs in which houseflies and other insects are trapped and then eaten. Thus, spiders help to control insect pests. However, several species of arachnids
So, beaks and no teeth are a fourth important characteristic of birds. Just as there are differences in the beaks of birds, there are differences in their feet. The feet of the pigeon and many other birds have 3 toes in front and 1 in back. Notice how the feet can grip a perch. Parakeets, parrots, and other related birds have a high body temperature and a fast heartbeat. A fourth characteristic is that birds have bills or beaks, but no teeth. As we study more about birds, we'll learn more about the characteristics that help us to understand these interesting animals, birds.
And the similar-looking but smaller redhead duck. Among the 4 great flyways, there is, of course, overlapping, and many variations in the actual flight paths. But in a generalized way, these represent the main routes, not only of waterfowl, but of many species of other birds, ranging from the robin, probably the best known of North American migrants, to less common types, such as the whooping crane.
He knew he must not read while eating. Food might drop on his book. But when supper was finished, then he and Sue could get their books. Before they read their books, Bobby and Sue put Sue's crayons away. It's birthday. David is wondering where all the people are going. Perhaps these people are going to meet someone arriving from another city or another country. Perhaps this man is going on vacation. Passengers like this man, as well as visitors, usually go first to this big building, the terminal building. In the terminal building, there are restaurants where travelers may eat and relax.
Besides grain crops, farmers of North China grow various garden crops. These melons may be sold in the marketplace of a nearby town. In North China, where much of the country is flat, we see carts and more draft animals than in South China. Oxen are used as work animals, as well as horses and mules.
With coins of gold am I paid, but with man's integrity.
No machine as yet had been invented that could give an artisan that same sense of pride he got from doing a job well himself. Smoothing out a delicate edge.
Sometimes that coffee bake you see the guys taking can last for months if there's a building slump. And work on some construction sites can be a little unsteady when the weather's bad, especially in winter. Still, you don't go through the hassles of running your own business, like contract carpenters.
have more treats inside.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
That's right. Say, no thanks. And don't eat the treats while you're collecting them. Stay in your own neighborhood. Don't get too far from home. Don't worry, you'll collect enough treats. People are expecting you. And even if you don't stop...
Saw some cows in a pasture, and he began to think about milk. Now, milk doesn't come from plants. But what are the cows eating? Why, grass, of course. And grass is a plant. Pigs furnish us with meat. And what do they eat? Corn, that's a plant.
Several minutes later, when the temperature reaches about 800 degrees centigrade, the salt will begin to liquefy at the bottom of the crucible. Watch the bulb. Now it is clear that current is flowing through the molten salt, so ions must now be present. Actually, ions were present in the sodium chloride crystals from the start. Solid sodium chloride is 100% ionized. Sodium chloride is called an electrolytic.
I was kind of glad I missed that tour bus. I had more fun exploring Kyoto by myself anyway.
In Greece, for example, you can see some of the different ways that people use olive oil. It's used for cooking. These beans were cooked in olive oil. It's also used as a salad dressing, along with lemon juice. Lemons are another common Mediterranean crop. The milk is cow's milk, but the cheese wasn't made from cow's milk. It's made from the milk of goats. Many goats are raised in. When the weather is very dry and grass is scarce, the goats sometimes climb small trees and eat their leaves. The date palm is one kind of tree that's found in hot parts of Mediterranean lands. Dates are vital food for the people of North Africa and not common in other Mediterranean lands. But here's a kind of tree we've seen before in Spain, Italy, and Greece. An olive tree. Olive.
And meat. We feed the nation with meat and grain from the plain states.
The southwestern states. Growth in the desert.
First, we grew on cattle, and then on oil. And we grew a lot.
In Georgia, chicken farming is a major industry.
This is my daddy's farm, and I just help him out on weekends. I'm washing the drinkers now. The chickens like fresh water. We raise broilers. That means we keep chicks until they're about 8 weeks old. The feeding's all automatic.
Termina tu desayuno, Pablo.
15, 16, 17, 18. Desayúnate.
all the way from Spain. A gift for Ricardo's kindness in helping to explain the pleasant, leisurely life of a Spanish colonial family of the old Southwest.
Now I have a candy stick like a barber pole. Now I have stripes on the wings of my airplane. Now I have a rubber band, and now I can fly my airplane again. Then Jim went to the park to play with his airplane and to eat his candy.
Israel is a nation of young people. Nearly 1/3 of its population is still in school. Israel is one of the world's most urbanized nations.
Miko was puzzled. For a moment, he didn't know what to do. Then he jumped down off the stand. Right past the grocery store he scampered. Past the clothing store. Past the florist shop.
Give me some straw. I want to build a house. And the farmer did. So the first little pig started to build his house. Soon the little straw house was finished. The first little pig thought it was a fine house. Not far away, the wolf had been watching all the while.
Friends World College was my first choice because its program seemed to facilitate what I was looking for.
It offers you a chance to have your education be totally integrated with your career, with your goals in life, and with the world.
When freshman students come, they're part of the North American program for 1 full year. Then students will progress to one of the other centers. We have 5 other centers around the world.
Produce Mediterranean crops such as citrus fruits and grapes. These are the world-famous Sultana grapes, from which sweet, seedless raisins are obtained. Turkish tobacco, which is often considered among the finest in the world, is also grown in the Mediterranean climate of Turkey's coastlands. Cotton is another important crop that comes from the mild lands near the sea.
More oxygen from getting to the fire. So another way to put out a fire is to take away its supply of air.
Billy and his mother and father enjoyed the steaks they had cooked over the fire in their fireplace.
Billy had learned much about fire, and he wanted to learn much more. For instance, he wanted to know why the fire in their fireplace was almost out now. Do you know? Do you know how to find out more about fire?
Bread made from wheat or other grains is one of the important foods of the people of Europe. Potatoes, too, are a staple food and are grown in many places. Livestock also provide food, meat and milk. And yet, even though the people use their lands wisely, and in many ways, they do not produce enough food to supply all.
The large snout helps the pig in digging for food under the soil. It is used to push up the sod. These young pigs are already learning to dig in the ground for insects and other food. Pigs grow rapidly. In a year, this one will be as large as his mother. But now, let's look at some of the relatives of domestic pigs, supposed to be very intelligent. He actually isn't as smart as your dog. The Indian elephant is easily trained, and his large size and great strength enable him to carry heavy loads. He's usually very tame and obedient. The trunk is very flexible and serves as an arm, while the small muscular flap of skin at the end of the trunk serves as a hand. With it, the animal is able to pick up small objects, like the peanuts you've probably fed to elephants at the circus. The trunk is also used by the elephant in drinking. He sucks the water into his trunk and then squirts it into his mouth. This zoo elephant is eating hay. His natural food is grass and leaves and twigs of trees. Elephants frequently push over trees to get at the leaves.
Check power, water, sanitary facilities, and emergency items. Be sure that everything is working. Also check heating and ventilation. And this must all be done immediately in case we have to send someone outside the shelter to make repairs. I want to do it before fallout radiation arrives.
For the Italians, and corned beef hash for the Yanks. At a water hole, 4 nations would wash their trucks and themselves. Before battle, they asked for strength in many different ways. So many nations, so many...
They all had to get out of my way when I was doing my hair. But you can see that doing this without gravity is not as easy.
Now, we always have the obligatory eating scene in the movie, and the one thing most people don't think about when you're eating up there is what if you...
Hello, I'm Miss Thompson. This is my first grade class. We've come for a tour of the library, please.
Fine, we were expecting you. All right, children, be quiet.
You'll find it when it comes to it.
But of course, Congress can override the veto by a 2/3 vote. Despite frequent clashes between President and Congress, the president holds a position of powerful leadership. Citizens regard him as their personal spokesman.
Dear Mr. President, I just want to tell you that out here we're all behind you. But there's one thing...
Citizens give him the greatest public attention.
Grass near the ground with his front teeth. Some of the young horses had already learned to eat grass, but to reach it, they had to spread their long legs. After eating, they drank some cool water. Another treat for Pride was the salt block. He licked it. The salt tasted good. When Pride was 6 months old, it was time to leave his mother. At first, he missed her very much, but soon he didn't mind because other young horses played with him. The trainer used a rattle to teach him. This scared Pride. But soon he was not afraid and held his head high. Time passed quickly, and soon Pride was 1 year old. He and the other horses ate lots.
My father could not need to hurry. I am giving Moses a good beginning for one so young. Our people believe that a wise teacher knows when it is time to stop teaching. Such a time was festival time.
Of course, it was the boys' lunch that they'd found, and the sandwiches tasted just fine.
Even President Franklin Delano Roosevelt was said to have remarked that to him, the ultimate in gracious living was to ride in a Pullman, and especially to sit in the dining car and watch the scenery go by while being served in front of a snowy white tablecloth.
The modern life is a good life, but problems do exist. Man has always been troubled by insect pests. Not only are they annoying, they carry germs from filth to your dinner table. But perhaps a large part of the problem is with you yourself. Yes, you. Let's go into your kitchen.
And the women are harvesting the last of the corn crop before winter. 16 oxen pull the corn wagon, not because of its weight, but to display Nganya's wealth in livestock. Corn is the staple food of the Africans in this region, but they seldom grow more than they need themselves. Outside one of the huts, part of Nganya's family is...
Our biggest industries, the restaurant. Here is a business employing over 2 million persons and doing over $2 billion worth of business annually, all because people have to eat, like to eat, and don't like the work of fixing their own food.
South Africans. In this family, the children have never seen any other country but South Africa. Mr. Young is a mining engineer whose grandfather came here from England in 1880 when gold was discovered. On Saturdays, Mary and Peter Young sometimes go to the city with their parents.
Papa's awake again, and he's hungry too. Down he goes for something to eat. Everything is quiet now, and it's dinner time. Mother's eating too.
Selective opacification of the left atrium in the right oblique projection may be accomplished by passing the catheter through the mitral valve from the left ventricle. Ventricle is cleared as medium passes through the aortic valve into the ascending aorta.
should never have moved here from Springfield, Bill. You're at the factory all day, and I don't know a soul in this town.
Nancy, we moved here for a good reason, a better job for me, opportunities for both of us. We'll meet some people pretty soon.
I guess it takes a little time, but...
That's right. But maybe there is something that we could do.
I hope so.
Kids, we're ready to eat.
Good picnic. Good food.
Well, good.
These are the same children preparing for their afternoon nap.
The long day ends in quietude, but the day's work is not done.
They don't have a hot lunch. They just open their store up out of a tin, you know, and pour it out in bowls, you know, just and eat it like that.
The children entering this school cafeteria are like many others. They had no breakfast before leaving home. But this school found a way to give them a hot meal early in the morning. The cafeteria staff is paid by the regular school lunch program, and the extra food is provided by the federal government.
Out on patrol, you tell time by counting the hours.
I'm from Seattle. After war was declared, I was evacuated from the Pacific coast. When the call came for volunteers for a combat team, I volunteered from a relocation center to show my loyalty and to prove that I had the right to live as a good American citizen.
That's pretty much the story of all these men.
We had to feed them, fill their bellies with good food, too. And we faced the monumental job of getting them the tools for their fighting. Designing those tools, testing them, making those tools, mass making them, financing their manufacture and buying them, and finally, making sure they get to the men who need them, whether for training or for fighting. And
the state maintains control of heavy industry. Even private enterprise is permitted within limits. And a new phrase, American aid, enters the Russian vocabulary. By March 1922, the American Relief Administration under Herbert Hoover is feeding 10 million Russians. But in March 1923, Lenin suffers a stroke. The following
concrete. And in the factories from Turin to Aberdeen, there was ever-growing roar and bustle. The Marshall Plan was the stimulant, NATO was the shield. But the effort itself came from hundreds of thousands of men and women who work now with a will because they saw a mighty purpose in it all. Now they were working for peace, working for themselves and working for tomorrow.
Usual quota of 105 Chinese a year. Today, however, they taste sweet liberty, the first of thousands of Chinese refugees to be granted asylum. Mr. Eng's elation will be echoed by those who follow. The happiest day of his life. Step in and let's go boating. What we have here may appear to be conventional automobiles, but the German inventor has built
turkey wing down with some rye.
Cucumber rye, Russian.
Come again?
Cucumber rye, Russian.
All right.
chocolate malt.
With beat me down.
Western, one up. Burn one.
When you slide it up, you don't bang, because if you do, you know, you're going to move the block, and then by the time you get over there, you're going to be way out. Now, this is the block we were looking for. You know exactly where this block has become. Now,
for this night, we are quartered in an old barn. When we took it over, the owners disappeared. While we are singing our Christmas carols, the farmer returns with his whole family. We invite them to join our celebration. Everything we have in food, cigarettes.
Christmas Day. Word is received that the western spearhead of the German 2nd Panzer Division has been stopped, just short of the Meuse. It's not good news to the men of Bastogne. They anticipate the powerful tank division will now turn back to hit them. They're right. Hitler is told by his generals that they can't reach the Meuse, much less the English Channel. Furious, he orders an all-out attack on Bastogne.
Even here in the rear, it's obvious from the great air power of the Americans how this battle will end. We cannot win. Brave men have died for nothing. Those that survive will forget the terrible times. They will talk and remember differently. Other people who listen, especially the young, will come to the conclusion.
The world, from the islands of Japan, other convoys, other soldiers leave for the unknown and sail away to war. They too set a southerly course for islands with names unknown to the men who must fight and die on them. For them also, the routine of shipboard life, the placid prelude to carnage.
Citizens already active in community development programs
On arrival, they moved into college dormitories, private school quarters available for the summer, and in one case, volunteers lived in a summer home donated by a local citizen. Many teams were welcomed by local people with a cookout or a swimming party. Then the work began, attacking the causes of poverty, especially by working with the children. The words you will hear are the volunteers' own expressions of their reactions to the people and the problems of poverty.
潜水艦の食事は艦長から水兵さんに至るまで皆同じである。一連卓上の乗組員にとって階級の上下こそあれ全員全く同じ家族のような和やかさである。
Out on patrol, you tell time by counting the hours since you left the ship. 16, 18 hours a day. Far from home and far from the sea, you cover endless miles of water accompanied only by the constant drone of diesel engines.
The world will have a brand new energy resource, one that will be vitally needed to assure an abundance of economical electricity for light, for power, and for our continuing high standard of living. But atomic energy can also be shipped in a can in the form of radioisotopes, mysterious products of the atomic age that start out as ordinary elements but become radioactive through exposure to atomic fission. Their radiations are invisible, yet so...
The ships are back in their proper formation once again, and you're back to the monotony of convoy routine. For a while, the tension is relaxed. There's a chance to get in some normal living. But there are some jobs in the Coast Guard that are never. So the soldiers take it easy now and trust the men of the Coast Guard and Navy to get them to their destination. Now they're just killing time, while they still have time to kill. Then there are the men of the tough merchant marine. They're out there with you, manning the cargo ships that carry the guns, munitions, and supplies. All the equipment necessary for the job ahead. Your 4-hour watch, then you're off 4 hours. And you put on the feed bag whenever you can, because soon the sea will be tossing your cutter around like a matchbox. Then food won't interest you. Topside, men are watching, always watching. And all the time the sound man is listening, hour after hour, for the telltale sound that will reveal the presence of a prowling submarine.
On an all-out effort to develop an atomic bomb.
Chadwick and the other physicists agree entirely with us that given pure uranium-235, we can make a bomb that will work.
I'm going to see the president tomorrow. I'm sure that he will agree that the job has got to be done and that we'll get the support that we need.
Pearl Harbor had plunged the United States into war. An effect.
York State Republican Convention is attended by former Vice President Richard Nixon and Governor Nelson Rockefeller as they help choose a senatorial candidate. Also on hand is one-time presidential candidate Thomas Dewey. Before nominations are called for, the convention hears Claire Booth Luce plead for unity. She was to have run as a conservative, but withdrew to throw her support to Senator Kenneth Keating. Senator Keating has refused to endorse the Goldwater-Miller ticket, but New York State Republicans nominate him by acclamation. The New York senatorial race has drawn national interest, for opposing Mr. Keating is a famous name. Across the nation in New York, there was a senatorial race of national interest. Robert F. Kennedy was on the ballot in opposition to Republican incumbent Kenneth Keating. Overcoming claims of carpetbagging, Mr. Kennedy defeated his Republican opponent. Senator Keating ran 1.5 million votes ahead of the national ticket, but he couldn't overcome the Johnson landslide and the magic of the Kennedy name.
In any disaster, your livestock need protection too. In case of nuclear attack, radiation is as dangerous to animals as it is to people.
After the enemy was driven out, the villagers and partisans dealt with traitors.
The government pays him an allowance for each child under 15. He is entitled to at least 3 weeks vacation each year with full pay. He has both the time and income to enjoy the natural delights of his country. Should he become ill, he is paid a daily sickness benefit. Hospitals provide free medical care.
The remaining German garrison was flushed out, and those who had collaborated with the Nazis received little sympathy from patriotic Frenchmen.
Farm families makes part of its livelihood from silk. The Shimatsus grow many mulberry trees on their farm because the leaves are needed to feed silk caterpillars. Mulberry leaves are the only food that silk caterpillars will eat. And the better the leaves, the times larger than when they were first hatched. That's why they must have large quantities of leaves to eat. It is also why their skins just can't grow fast enough to keep up with them. So every 3 or 4 days, the caterpillars will stop eating, sleep for one. But soon these caterpillars will lose all interest in food. They will move around nervously, but won't eat a thing. This means living in the dormitory is quite different from life on the farm. Their rooms and food are furnished by the company.